So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of how I approach taking photos on the field. As you can see here, the round has just started. I thought I'd get a couple of portraits, and a player has quite kindly decided to pose. So as I get into position and take the first shot, my settings were way off. I had daytime settings which are not at all appropriate for being under the lighting on this oval. So I had to change them over to what we have here. For those who are interested, I'll put the settings up on the bottom of the screen. Pretty much all the shots on this camera were using exactly the same settings as I was going around. So I'm really just trying to find some interesting positions, some interesting poses, people, trying to get either a clean background or some sort of pattern going on. It is difficult as you're going around the field, so you have to kind of look around behind. This shot here, there was a lot of sort of cross lighting which didn't really work out too well. The other thing you'll notice as we're going along is that I've included all the photos, so whether they're good or bad. So a lot of them here are ones that I wouldn't normally publish. They might be out of focus or mistimed or a bit blurry, but they'll pop up as I'm taking the shots. So as people sort of line up, it's a good chance to get them when they're not running around or moving too quickly. Because even with the shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, a weapon in motion will still be a bit of a blur. These ones here were not that great. The focus didn't quite catch properly, and yeah, shot of someone's back, not really that interesting. So just repositioning to try and get a better angle, trying to show from the side one of the fights. This one here, it caught focus on the shield, but that's close enough that you can sort of see the face and recognize who it is. Now as the line's moving back, I'm trying to keep pace, but I was getting towards the back of people, so choosing another subject. One of the things as you're going around is trying to work out where the fights are going to be taking place, but also looking for players that are dead or just standing around, like that one there. Getting a vertical shot here. It was at this point I remembered I had the action cam on the camera, so I decided to try and only take landscape shots from there on. Normally if I'm going around, I'd get a mixture of portrait and landscape. Yeah, you can see here that the movement made for a blurry shot there of the person running. And again, as they're moving, it didn't really sort of capture anything interesting. So I saw a potential for a shot here of a pattern of like the three people once they sort of line up. So I'm just waiting for the shot, and then, yeah, once they're sort of equal distance, get a nice sort of pattern. Even though you can't see the faces, it gives something a bit of visual interest. So the advantage of having such a long telephoto lens is that when I put it out to 200mm, the full sort of zoom in, I can be a fair distance away and still get a nice clean shot showing detail of the player. With a wider lens, I'd have to be a lot closer to the action. So as it gets closer to the end of the round, it gets a bit harder to find good action opportunities because more people are running. However, you get good opportunities of people who are just sort of standing or sitting around on the field. So another thing that I'll do fairly often is I'll take a knee to try and get a more parallel perspective rather than shooting slightly down at the players or at the subjects of the photos. So this is the second point, it's just been reset. Trying to get some shots of one of the warbands, but as I'm walking back, it's creating some shake as well. So they're not the sharpest photos. Some of them have come out okay, but it's really just trying to sort of isolate the players and seeing what can be done. So the photos that you're seeing have had some very slight post-processing editing done to them, a bit of noise reduction and some exposure or white balance changes. But a lot of the time it's just trying to sort of get the people looking good. If there's a good section of light, get that as well. However, one of the important things is to wait for a pose or wait for a position. Sometimes it's for them to look one way than the other, but you're really sort of trying to get something of just not a person standing in the middle of a football field. So here I'm waiting for a sort of a pose. That one's not really that exciting, so I try a different angle. They're trying to get some of the people running in. That one turned out okay, even though they were moving. It was just sort of as they were shifting their weight. This one here, there was way too many dark clothes to really distinguish what was happening between each of them. So it's one I probably wouldn't have published, but otherwise it was a fine photo. And sometimes if I'm not seeing anything, I'll just go over to the other side of the field and see if anything new sort of springs to mind. That one there, I really like the shot apart from the halberd head blocking the view, so just waiting around for a clear shot. And now the other halberd was blocking. So sometimes it's just a bit of patience. Wait for a clear shot, wait for him to look this way, and then you get a nice sort of shot of the face. More walking around. So trying to photograph a battle like this, you don't get as much steps in as one of the players, but you do tend to sort of walk around a fair bit to try and get new and interesting points of view. So it can be quite good to just shoot through the line with their back to you, to the ones who are facing you. That way you get some out of focus players in the front and a bit of foreground to give some perspective of what you're looking at. This is the point where I completely forget that I have a action cam on the camera and just point it to the ground as I'm walking around. So I've just sped that up a bit. Then I remember what I'm doing and try to get a shot, but again, it's just a bit of a blurry mess. And yeah, they're running the goal, or running the point in. So I think this is the start of the next round. So if players are walking into battle, you can sometimes get some good action shots of them just sort of strutting along. But often you'll get someone who's sort of looking away or things like that, which can make it a bit less visually interesting. But also for the last stragglers, they'll generally have a very clean background. So it gives you a different perspective. Without a lot of clutter in the background, you can get some nice clean photos. So moving back towards the actual fighting, trying to get some shots of people in action. So there's a natural gap in the line, which was fine apart from the player was adjusting their weapon, so I try to wait for another opportunity, get some other shots in the meantime. So you can see here you just got the shoulders of the players on either side, sort of framing the photo there. Another thing which can be sometimes helpful is wait for the moment of impact of someone who's attacking, because one, they're not quite moving at that point, and it can be a dynamic image. So just going back to where that original player was, trying to get a clear shot. Now the sort of his sword is in the way, which is casting a shadow as well, so I thought I'd do a test shot. So just waiting, and that's the one that I was wanting to get. Nice clean shot of the face. So moving on to the further down the line. So from the photos that I've shown, actually here's a case where I've accidentally bumped into a player, which I try to avoid most of the time. But yeah, from the shots that I'm taking, probably about half of these are ones that I'd be happy with and that I would post online. Mainly because, one, I want to show my abilities in the best case, or the best view, as well as the game itself. I want to show the most impressive looking shots of the game and the hobby. So if there's technical problems or out of focus or things like that, I generally won't put the shots online. So trying to follow along the battle. See a player isolated taking a knee after dying, so I get a simple shot. And even though they weren't looking towards camera, the perfect 90-degree profile can be distinctive enough to make for a good image. So while I'm sort of looking around, I'm not looking through the camera lens. I'm just looking for an interesting image and then bringing the camera up to the eye. So it's trying to sort of get shapes or patterns or interesting compositions. So if people are interested, I can do a video about the types of compositions that I use and sort of break down the shapes of some of the images that I've taken and how I try to have leading lines or interesting viewpoints. So let me know if that's something that would be useful or interesting. So sometimes I might just be waiting for a player to sort of look towards the camera and they don't, so I don't end up taking the photo. And just move on to the next one. So instead of trying to sort of force a photo or just take hundreds of shots, I'll have more of a tendency to just wait, because there will be shots that will appear. So if I keep an eye out for what's happening or look around different areas of the battlefield, generally something there will be sort of catch my eye and I'll take a photo of it. So whether it's the individual players or the fighting, I'll see something that looks sort of interesting. I think I try to get a shot of the running for the flag down to the point, but again, it's a missed focus, and so the actual point of interest, the flag, didn't end up being in focus. Which, in these sorts of lighting conditions, it's really sort of do the best that you can. Another example where just a bit blurry, and then a sharp photo. Another one that turned out fairly sharp. This one, the focus was on the shield instead of the face. So it's, again, hit and miss as to what it will actually do. The camera that I'm using isn't using any sort of eye focus, autofocus, so it just sort of will do its best on focusing on whatever's sort of closest or most prominent. So chatting with some of the players as I'm walking along, still keeping an eye out for anything of interest. Another thing I try to do is keep an eye out for warbands or groups that I haven't taken many photos of. So I try to, if I am aware that I've taken a lot of one or two particular warbands, I'll go looking for other ones just to make sure that there is some degree of coverage and good images for everyone. And that includes the new players as well. I often try to get a photo or two of the first timers looking good as they're trying out this wonderful hobby that we have. So one of the natural ones is whenever a warband sort of lines up, you get some really good leading lines through the shield wall, even a staggered or a spread out sort of skirmish line like that. And sometimes players will be sort of step out in front, so you can get some nice isolated shots as well. So because there's a gap there, I figure at some point something will happen. And yep, there's a bit of a duel between a couple of players. Try to get some action shots. Not super happy with how they turned out. They don't seem too dynamic or interesting. But there's nothing inherently really wrong with them. So someone's running in, and again, blurry image due to movement, bad focus. So those ones I wouldn't normally publish. Relatively still player, so you can get some decently sharp images. They're a little bit softer due to the noise reduction, but overall they're still quite usable. Again, they're formed up into a loose line, so you get a bit of a leading line sort of going on. So when the things get scrappy, it's a bit hard to get good, clean images because it's hard to visually tell what's going on if there's not separated groups clearly identifiable. So that can be a bit of a challenge. Otherwise, you can sometimes just sort of try and show the chaos. These ones here, I was trying to get the archer just as they were firing the bow, but again, missed focus and mistimed. It's absolutely possible to get the shots just as the arrow is leaving the bow. The response time on modern cameras is really short, so if you time it as they release, then yeah, you can easily get that shot with a fast enough shutter speed.